Latest on the trade negotiations, we're joined here in the studio by Cohen. He is the president and CEO of Inverway, a business development company based here in Washington, D.C. So day two getting underway in Shanghai. What will you be watching for? What do you think, what signals will the international community be watching for in these meetings?
Well, first of all, we need to be pleased by the fact that there are negotiations again, because they had stopped at some point. And after the meeting of the summit in Osaka, both heads of state decided that they were going to go back to the negotiating table. That's one positive thing. Now, if this is going to generate a result soon, is something that is very complicated at this point, because particularly in the United States, we are entering a political campaign. And I think that the results of the negotiations will be heavily influenced by the political domestic dynamics in the United States. So we have to be very watchful, because it's not only what is happening at the negotiating table, we need to watch also what is happening domestically in the U.S.
Mixed messages from the White House on Tuesday early. Is it managing expectations? We heard the U.S. president make some comments that China is eager to make a trade deal, but it is up to Donald Trump to decide. And then he also mentioned that he thinks that China could also be possibly waiting him out of office, waiting past the election. And what do you make of these dueling messages that he's putting out?
Precisely. There it is. It's the domestic political campaign which is influencing whatever the president has been saying about the negotiations. He even said that he doesn't care if there are no results, because in fact I think that time is sort of pressuring him in a certain way, because if he doesn't get a deal, that will be criticized by the opposition in the US. If he gets a bad deal, that will be worst. And if he gets a no deal, then the whole thing will amount to hurting most of the people that has voted for him. Because you see, for instance, the farmers in the United States are very concerned because they're not selling their stuff in China. And that's something that is very critical. At some point, the Secretary of Agriculture, Mr. Purdue, said the other day on camera, he said, patriotism doesn't pay the bills. And the farmers are hurting because they are tolerating all this, strategy or whatever you want to call it. And then the fact is that they are not selling their stuff.
I want to get your take on the significance of this change in venue for the very first time in these face-to-face talks there in Shanghai. We heard earlier about all of the businesses, the international, the U.S. businesses based there for their Asia operations. But there's this historic significance of the opening of bilateral ties between these two countries, with Richard Nixon signing the Shanghai Communique there. What do you make of this change of scenery, or changing the channels, if you will?
Well, I hope it means that Shanghai, being the business capital of China, not Beijing. Beijing would be the political, bureaucratic capital. No? Shanghai would be the business capital. I hope the message is that they are really trying to do business now, because the private sector is very concerned on both sides about the results of these things. And the political interference now, it's complicating matters even more.
You mentioned the importance of these face-to-face talks, the fact that after 2 months since their last meeting, they're back at the table again. I mean, there's not an expectation per se, but the fact that they're meeting, how important is that to make the trip over there and to have this face-to-face?
I think it is. It is essential, because part of the arrangement in Osaka was that the United States was not going to impose more tariffs on Chinese imports. So there is a standstill now, and that's good. And that standstill should last until the negotiations are going on. And that's positive. I think that's basically what we're getting now. Now, as far as the results are concerned, that's where the complications begin.
All right, Cohen, we'll see what happens here on day two. We appreciate your time, as always.
My pleasure, Elaine.